Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. My name is Larry, and I was married to Judith for 6 years. For a long time, I thought we were happy. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but I never imagined things could take such a turn. It started about 9 months ago. Judith became distant, emotionally and physically. She started going out more often, saying it was girls' nights, or she was just running errands. At first, I didn't think much of it. Judith always valued her independence. But then, the arguments began. One evening, Judith came home late, smelling faintly of perfume I didn't recognize. "Hey," I said casually as she walked in. "Where were you? I thought we were going to watch that show tonight." She looked at me like I'd asked the dumbest question in the world. "I told you I was meeting Samantha for drinks," she said, dropping her purse on the counter. "No, you didn't," I replied, trying to keep my tone even. "You said you'd be home by 8. "It's not a big deal, Larry," she snapped. "Why are you always on my case?" I remember feeling a knot tighten in my chest. "I'm not on your case. I'm just trying to understand why you've been acting so distant lately." "Maybe you're imagining things," she said, brushing past me to head upstairs. That's how most of our conversations went after that. Short, tense, unresolved. A couple of weeks later, Judith told me she needed to visit her parents in her hometown. She said her mom wasn't feeling well and she wanted to spend a few days with her. I didn't question it. I mean, what kind of husband would I be if I told her not to check on her family? The first night she was gone, I called her to see how things were going. "Hey, babe," I said when she picked up. "Hey," she replied, her voice distant. "How are you doing?" I asked. "I'm fine. Mom's doing okay, just tired." We didn't talk long. She seemed eager to get off the phone, but I figured she was just tired from the drive. The next day, I called her again. This time, she didn't pick up. I frowned at my phone. It wasn't like Judith to ignore my calls. I waited about 20 minutes and tried again. This time, it went straight to voicemail. "Judith, it's me. Just calling to check in. Call me back when you can," I said, trying to sound casual, even though I was starting to worry. I waited another hour, pacing the living room, glancing at my phone every few minutes. Still no response. Something felt off. She wasn't the type to leave me hanging like this. Finally, I decided to call her parents to see what was going on. Her mom answered after a couple of rings. "Hi, Alice," I said. "It's Larry. I just wanted to check in. Judith isn't answering her phone and I'm getting a little worried." "Oh, Larry," her mom said warmly. "Don't worry, she's fine. She went out with some friends earlier. She should be back soon." "Out with friends?" I asked, my chest tightening. "Do you know who she's with?" "I think she mentioned meeting up with some old friends from school," Alice replied. "Nothing to worry about, dear." I thanked her and hung up, but my unease didn't go away. 2 more hours passed, and still nothing from Judith. Finally, I picked up the phone and called her again. This time she answered. "Hello?" she said, sounding annoyed. "Judith, where have you been?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "I've called you 3 times. Hours have passed and you didn't even call me back." "I was busy," she snapped. "I was out with some friends. What do you want, Larry?" "What do I want?" I said, my frustration boiling over. "I want to know why you're ignoring my calls. Is that too much to ask?" "You're being ridiculous," she said, her tone icy. "You don't get to check up on me every second. What, are you going to control me even when I'm visiting my parents?" "That's not what this is about, and you know it," I shot back. "I was worried, Judith. You could have at least let me know you were okay." She let out a bitter laugh. "God, you're exhausting. I don't have time for this right now." And with that, she hung up. I stared at my phone, stunned. That wasn't like Judith at all. Something was definitely wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. At least, not yet. The next day, I called again. She picked up, but her voice sounded shaky, almost as if she were out of breath. "Hey, Judith, you okay?" I asked. "Yeah, I'm fine," she said quickly. "Just went for a quick run. What's up?" We chatted for a few minutes, but there was an edge to her tone, like she was distracted. "All right, I'll talk to you tomorrow," she said. "Okay, good night," I replied. But she didn't hang up. I don't think she even realized the call was still connected. I was about to hang up myself when I heard her voice again, faint but clear. "Don't worry, he bought it," she said, and then a man's voice responded. I froze. My stomach dropped. You sure he doesn't suspect anything? The man asked. No, Judith replied, laughing softly. He's clueless. My heart pounded as I listened. I wanted to hang up, but I couldn't. The next words I heard shattered me. Come here, the man said. And then there was silence, except for the sound of kissing. I ended the call, my hands shaking. My mind raced. Did I really just hear that? My chest felt tight and my breath quickened. I wanted to convince myself I'd misheard, that there was some other explanation. Maybe she was joking, or it wasn't what it sounded like. But deep down, I knew. There was no mistaking it. Judith, my wife, the woman I thought I'd spend my life with, was with another man. My stomach churned and I felt like I might throw up. How could she do this to me? To us? I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at my phone. My thoughts spiraled. Anger, sadness, disbelief. I thought about all the times I called her yesterday and she didn't pick up, her angry response. She was probably with him then too. It all made sense now. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and powerless all at once. But one thing was certain. I couldn't ignore this. I had to do something. The next morning I decided I needed proof. Solid proof. I couldn't confront Judith without it because I knew she'd deny everything. She'd twist my words, make me feel like I was imagining things, and somehow I'd end up apologizing. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. The investigator worked fast, and 2 days later he called me. I've got what you need, he said. We met at his office. He slid a manila folder across the table. Here are the photos and a full summary. I've also forwarded the videos to your email. I opened the folder. The first photo was Judith outside a hotel, holding hands with a man I didn't recognize. My chest tightened as I flipped through more pictures. Them walking into the hotel, sitting close at a cafe, kissing in a parking lot. Check your email for the videos, the investigator added. I pulled out my phone, opened the email, and pressed play on the first video. It was grainy but clear enough. Judith and the man were standing by a car, kissing. My stomach churned. His name's Mark, the investigator said. They've been meeting at the hotel outside her hometown. I nodded, unable to speak. My hands trembled as I clutched the folder. This was it, the proof I dreaded yet needed. I thanked him and left, sitting in my car for what felt like forever. My mind was racing. The betrayal was undeniable. Judith wasn't just lying. She had cheated, and I could no longer ignore it. That night I barely slept. I kept replaying everything in my head, her voice on the phone, the photos, the video. By morning I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't stay married to someone who betrayed me like that. I had to take action. The first thing I did was grab my phone and open our banking app. I transferred every penny from our joint account into my personal account. I wasn't being vindictive. I was protecting myself. I knew Judith would try to access the money eventually, and I wasn't about to let her use it to fund her affair. Next, I called a locksmith. By the time the locksmith arrived, I had already started planning my next move. He worked quickly, replacing the locks on every door in the house. When he handed me the new set of keys, I felt a small sense of relief, like I was starting to take control of the situation. After that, I went to a lawyer's office to start the divorce process and discuss how I could protect my assets. I wanted to make sure Judith would get the least possible from the divorce. The lawyer asked a few questions, and I briefly explained the situation. We'll get the paperwork started, she said, looking over some documents, and we'll also go over strategies to protect your assets. Thank you, I replied, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety as I prepared for the next steps. When I got home, I didn't waste any time. I went to our bedroom and grabbed every one of Judith's belongings. Her clothes, her shoes, her makeup. It all went into boxes. I didn't care if I was being ruthless. I wasn't about to let her walk back into this house like nothing had happened. By the time I was done packing, the boxes filled half the living room. I carried them outside, stacking them neatly in the front yard where she couldn't miss them. I sat in the living room, staring at the empty space where her things used to be. The house felt different, quieter. For the first time, it didn't feel like our home. It felt like my home. I glanced at the clock. It was late. Judith would be back soon, and I knew there'd be a storm when she saw what I'd done. But I was ready for it. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. Judith came home that evening. I heard her car pull into the driveway, and then Silence. A moment later, there was a loud knock on the door. "Larry!" she yelled. "What the hell is going on?" I opened the door and leaned against the frame. "You tell me," I said calmly. Her eyes darted to the boxes on the lawn. "Why are my things outside, and why can't I get in?" "Because you don't live here anymore," I replied, my voice steady. "I know, Judith. I know everything." Her face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb," I snapped. "I heard you, on the phone, with him." She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "And just in case you want to deny it, I've got photos, videos, all of it." Judith's hands trembled. "Larry, please let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," I shouted. "You cheated, Judith. You lied to me. You broke us." Tears streamed down her face, but I didn't care. "You don't understand," she sobbed. "I didn't mean for it to happen." I laughed bitterly. "You didn't mean for it to happen? Don't insult me by pretending it was an accident. You were supposed to visit your parents because your mom wasn't feeling well, not to screw around." "Please," she begged. "Let me in. We can talk about this." "No," I said firmly. "We're done. I've filed for divorce. You can take your things and go. Don't come back." She didn't say a word. Her face showed a mix of sadness and regret as she turned and left. The door clicked shut behind her, and as I stood there for a moment, a sense of relief washed over me. The weight that had been crushing me for the last couple of days was finally gone, and I could breathe again, free from the chaos she had brought into my life. Judith moved in with her lover, and the divorce process began. It was messy, as I expected it would be. She tried to argue for a share of the house and our savings, but my lawyer made sure she didn't get a cent more than she deserved. The hardest part wasn't the legal battles, though. It was letting go of the life I thought we had. I spent weeks questioning myself, wondering if I could have done something differently. But in the end, I realized it wasn't my fault. Judith made her choice, and I had to live with it. Months later, I finally started to move on. I've learned a lot about myself through this ordeal. Trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to repair. As for Judith, I don't know what she's doing now. And honestly, I don't care. She's not my problem anymore. Eventually, her relationship with Mark didn't last more than 3 months. I heard rumors from mutual acquaintances that he had kicked her out because she cheated on him. It didn't surprise me. After all, she had already shown me who she really was. Then one day she showed up at my door looking defeated. She begged me to take her back, saying she'd made a huge mistake. "You're the man I want," she claimed, her voice shaky. I realized it now. "Please, Larry, I want to come home." I looked at her, feeling nothing but a quiet sense of finality. "It's too late, Judith," I said, my voice steady. "You made your choice, and now you have to live with it." She stared at me for a moment, then turned and left without saying another word. I closed the door behind her and took a deep breath, finally feeling the weight of everything that had happened lifting off my shoulders. It was over, and I was free. Thank you for watching.